So, in today's episodes, we're going behind the curtain to explore why we intentionally set up Interview Valet like we did. These are common questions we get from clients, and I want to share them with you. They ask, why did you go remote back in 2016? Why isn't my picture plastered over every page on the website? And why does podcast interview marketing fit so well for my personal strengths, my lifestyle, and even for our ideal clients? Now, I'm not saying that I have all the answers for you. I do say that I'm happy to share with you what's worked with us over the last 9 years at Interview Valet.
Thanks so much, Tom. And now that you're here, I have a few questions for you. Can you walk us through your personal journey of how you built a business that aligns with the desired lifestyle you wanted?
Yeah, and I step back if figured out what I didn't want. So my last business was brick and mortar in Kalamazoo, Michigan, right? So you had to explain to people we're open 9 to 5 unless it snows, and that's East Coast time. Right. And so as I looked and said, Interview Valet is going to serve a global audience, right, with podcast guests and podcast hosts. I don't know that we can do that brick and mortar in Kalamazoo. Um, so we looked and said, I want to find the best people everywhere we go. And that makes for a remote team. And well, if you have a remote team, you better have a remote marketing um, aspect to it also. And so with that, I believe, well, one of our core values at the company is work is what you do, not where you go. Right. So in the same way, I wanted to be able to do my role as the chief evangelist officer wherever I was, right? If I was in Kalamazoo, Michigan, or speaking in a meeting or traveling around to meet team members and clients. So with all of that, I was trying to design the business and the marketing and the structure so that it supported what my vision of what my life and the company was supposed to be.
So, how crucial would you say it is to kind of evaluate and look at the goals that you want when you're thinking about building a business? Because it's easy to just have these ideas and try and run with it, but surely you have to have the end game in mind, right? How do you deal with that?
That's a great thing because a lot of times people, when they start with the goal, their goal is I want to make money, or I want to leave my corporate job, right? I don't want to have that corporate job. And both of those are doable, right? If you just want to make money, it's doable, right? And there's easy ways to do it, right? Go into crime, to go into, selling illegal drugs. I just want to leave my corporate job. Well, sure, just become homeless, right? There's easy ways to do it. Often think it's like people when they say, I want to lose weight. Well, it's really easy to lose, 25 pounds in a day. All you got to do is like lop off your leg and you do it. And they're like, well, I don't want that. Well, then be very clear what your goals are. I was just heard one of our clients before. He was talking about that he left the military because he wanted more freedom in his life. And his wife reminded him they got out of the military and he went into a job that he gave away all of that freedom, right? And so he chose the hell that he was going into. So I think when you start talking about the goals of the business, you have to look not just financial goals, but lifestyle goals, and not just short term, but long term, right? So often we make our own prison, right? You're like, oh, I wish for this, right? I wish I could do this. And then when you get it, you realize, oh, this is not what I wanted. So being very intentional with that. The other thing, Chloe, is that, often, you'll hear me talk about this story uh, at Interview Valet here. People talk about what's the best um, business advice you ever got. Well, I'll flip it around. The worst business advice I ever got. Right. And that came from my grandfather. I was 17 years old. I was having a beer with him, going away to the Navy. He thought it was my first beer. Um, and I'll never forget the advice that he gave me. He said, choose carefully who you drink with because you can't choose who you work with. Now, that was reality for him, right? He was a mechanic in a small town. If you were within 10 miles of St. Charles, Illinois, you were a customer of Cunningham Service Station. But I think today we get to choose who we work with, um, not only as customers, but also with team members too. So as you talk about goals, it's like, which people energize me? Which people do I learn from? What kind of team members do I want on there? And so all of those go into goals and to set the business up so that it's consistent with your goals, not just the financial ones, but the personal ones, because, you may get the financial goals that you wish and then realize this doesn't make me happy. So if you get the other things, the happiness will come and the financial rewards will come too.
Okay, so it's easy to kind of stay focused on the big picture there. You know, your team, your goals, your financial benefits, if you will. That's obviously great. But I'm not even a business owner, and in my own job, I get very distracted by the day-to-day business things that come up. So obviously, the owner has to deal with that a lot more. So, what are some obstacles similar to that you see business owners dealing with, like losing sight of the big picture because of the day-to-day?
Oh, if you think it gets better as a business owner, it actually just gets worse because you've got more um, freedom and flexibility. And freedom and flexibility is a wonderful thing, but constraints make choices easier, right? If you've got all the money in the world, what are you going to spend it on? Where, if you've got your allowance, it's like, okay, well, I know I can spend it on these things there. So I think a lot of times with business owners, we've got FOMO, fear of missing out, right? So we want to go after this and the shiny objects. And, I think it was one of our all hands calls. One of the trivia questions was, if Tom was a dog, what kind of dog would he be? And I think I'd be the same kind of dog that most business owners are. When somebody said, oh, he'd be Doug from Up, right? Where it's like, oh, squirrel.
Oh yeah, going after everything, huh?
Yeah, and I think that's one of those things that we see a lot of times, right? And I'll just speak to it on the marketing side, right? Instagram, they brought out threads, and I saw so many of my friends that are other business owners. They're like, oh, I've got to be the first one on threads, right? We've got to build this platform up, and I don't want to miss out. Well, these were the same people that were the first on Clubhouse, and then they sort of scratch their heads and say, well, where's Clubhouse? Or is Threads going to take off? And there's lots of things that you could do, but what are the things that you're supposed to do? So one of the things that I try to remind myself, and sometimes it's my team that has to remind me of it. You guys are great, is to take a step back and is like, is this where your clients are? Right? Is this going to be important a week from now, a month from now, or a year from now? Right. I must admit that there are times where it's like, oh, I've got to put this post up on social media. Right. It may take 10 or 15 minutes to do it. Right. It's perfect. I don't remember it a day later. Nobody's interacting with it a day later. So one of the things that I force myself to do is to say, will I remember this? Will it make a difference a year from now? So if I'm doing social media, how can I repurpose this clip so I'm not just putting it up once? If I'm doing a podcast interview, is this going to be evergreen, right? People are going to hear it for years. And, we've gotten clients, I think that the record now is 5 years after an interview where somebody heard the interview, came to us and became a client. But also, what have I already done that I could repurpose, right? So as we have grown, it's not just working harder, 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 more, 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 but what can we do to get more from the content that we've done? So as I look at making those decisions, it's like if I spend 10 minutes on the perfect tweet or the perfect LinkedIn post, right? It's going to be seen for one day. If I spend $500 on a Facebook ad to boost it, right? it will be seen for a day, or maybe it's a paid ad, maybe it's a brochure, right? That brochure at the conference, I'm going to do a half page ad because everybody will see that. Well, they only see it the first day, then they throw it away. Whereas if I invest 45 minutes of time to have a meaningful discussion with the audience, then we can repurpose that. And it doesn't take any more of my time, but by putting a little bit of money in there to repurpose it, you guys can make me look smart, right? If I talk for 45 minutes, you can find a 90-second clip that is pure gold. So to repurpose that, to put that out and really trying to leverage that. And I think that goes back to goals, right? Do you just want to be doing more, 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 or do you want to be doing things that are more impactful?
Okay. Well, in podcasting, it's similar to entertainment in a sense too. When I'm bored, I'm not going look for pamphlets to read. I'm going to look for a podcast to listen to. So that's a really good point, that there's the evergreen content you talk about sometimes. You can always go back to it. Whereas an Instagram post or a brochure, I'm definitely not doing that. I'm never thinking about it again. So that's really insightful. So let's talk more about podcast interview marketing, because that's my favorite topic ever. How how can that be integrated into an effective marketing system? Even if like the local entrepreneur wants to do it, what could she do with podcast interview marketing?
And thank you for saying podcast interview marketing, not podcast guesting, right?
I know
Because,
you hate that, Tom. Yep.
well, they're two different things. They're not synonymous, right? So don't tell me you're doing social media marketing if you just every now and then when you think of something, you throw a post up on social media and you wonder, how come it's not growing my business, right? Well,
Well, and that's that intentional that you talked about earlier, right? You need to be intentional with it.
exactly, being intentional, and then also having a strategy behind the tactics. So just posting to Instagram every now and then is a tactic. Just being on a guest on a podcast, that's a tactic, right? But you've got to put that into an overall strategy so that you can say, all right, here's who I want to talk to, right? You don't want to talk to the entire world. I'm sorry, not everybody is interested in your business. I'd say very few people are interested on your business, right? The truth is, most of us are selling, well, we're all selling preparation H, right? Nobody cares about our product or service. They care about the pain in their rear end. So you've got to find the people that you want to talk to. And that's the first sort of focus thing. And Eddie Yoon, uh, previous client of ours, wrote that book Super Consumers, where the idea is you don't want to talk to everyone, you just want to talk to your ideal customers, and then they'll promote you, they'll find other customers. So if you've got a business, think about who your best customers are, who are your advocates, not the people that may buy one from you, but buy everything that you've ever done, right? Focus on them, focus talking to them. And then from a podcast interview marketing standpoint, how can you tell the story? How can you engage with them? How can you get that know, like, and trust? And we'll talk with clients when they come to us. Podcasts are not perfect for everyone, right? If if you are going after the hearing impaired, the deaf audience, right? Um, it's a great market, right? It's 10% of the U.S. population have hearing difficulties, but they're probably not listening to podcasts then. So find the right market for them. So find who is listening, what their problems are, who they're already listening to, so you can tap in on that, and then show up to give great value, right? Um, Gary Vaynerchuk always talks about jab, 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 right hook, right? I don't know. I probably missed a couple jabs. I always look at it as give, 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 ask, right? So your marketing should be giving great information. It should be giving thought leadership. Give your best stuff out there, because if you keep doing that, people are going to ask you, well, how do I work with you? Or when somebody else says, who should I work with? Do you know anybody that can solve this problem? They're going to say, oh, yeah, you need to talk with these people. So using it as an overall strategy. The other thing to look at is what is consistent with your company, your goals, and who you are, right? So for me, I've written a lot of blogs in my life, right? And most of them have felt like a homework assignment. It's hard for me to write a blog, right? IR engineer, I'll diagram it out, but to actually write it out can be tough. But to talk is much easier. The other thing is that for some people, they want to talk, but they don't want to fly all over. Right? There's not a whole lot of direct flights from Kalamazoo, Michigan. So for me to be a public speaker would mean being a lot of time on the road. And I admire those people that do it because that's a hard lifestyle. To me, I can speak to 10 times as many people with no travel, and I can do it over time. So as you look at that marketing thing, say, what are your strengths? Who are your ideal customers? How do they learn? How can I repurpose this? There's a lot of problems in the world today, Chloe, but there's no better time to be alive because, not everybody is an audible learner, right? But you can take this podcast interview here, you can transcribe it, you can make some blogs, you can make some articles, you can make some video clips, you can put it all these different places so that we can make it easy for us to create it and then easy for our clients to consume it in the way they want. So you have to start looking at this overall strategy. What's your marketing strategy? Not just what tactics am I using? Because there's lots of people selling tactics, right? The time we've been talking here, you could have made, 10 automated posts. You could have sent a million emails. You could have sponsored the Little League baseball team and had an ad on a billboard, right? All of those are tactics, but how are they fitting in your strategy?
And what are some more practical tips? Because obviously, identifying your audience, we all know that. But when it comes to more practical tips, how can you make sure your podcast stands out?
Yeah. And so I would say start with looking at, are you going to get true value from this, right? Before we ever bring somebody on, we talk with them about, could you get great value from podcast interview marketing? And there's some of the things that we look at. The first one, is it a transaction or is it a relationship sale, right? So if it's just a transaction, people probably don't have to know, like, and trust you. And the example I always use is uh, the earbuds, right? I still use the wired earbuds because I put them through the wash like once a week. And sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But when they don't, I don't care. I'll just go get another cheap pair and use those. I don't have to know who the company is, why they do it, why theirs is better, all of that. It's, to me, it's just a disposable. But if I'm working with somebody that's more of a relationship sale, right? A higher ticket item, a higher trust item. So that could be, a consultant, right? Professional services, B2B sales. It could be somebody coming out with a new category, right? So that they've got a different point of view. You're not going to be able to do that off of just a TikTok dance or a quick little paid ad. It's going to take more there. So I would look at that and say, are those the people that you want to talk to? Couldn't you get away with just Facebook ads, right? Or do you need something that's more of a relationship? The other thing that's timely is that as we're listening to this, also think about what platforms you're going to be competing with in the next year. So if you're hearing this in 2024, in the United States, there's a presidential election coming up. If you didn't notice, right? And I'll make a prediction: who's going to lose in the 2024 election? And it's not a candidate; it's anybody that is trying to compete with the politicians. Because they've got unlimited budget. So they're going to buy all the ads and drive up the price for everyone else. They're going to increase the volume so much that people stop listening. And even they've changed some of the laws and the regulations, right? It's going to be harder than ever for businesses to send emails and texts in 2024 because of new regulation. But it's funny, when they wrote those regulations, there's one group of people they carved out, and that was the politicians because they didn't want to interfere with free speech. So if you're trying to compete with people with unlimited budgets, good luck, right? Yeah, you can buy a Super Bowl ad, but I don't know that it's going to really change your business. Just put you $1 million in debt for most of us.
Okay. So, what are some benefits that you have seen personally that businesses can get from interview marketing rather than more traditional forms of marketing?
Yeah, and I really think the better the marketing, the easier the sale, right? And too often now, there's this like modern marketing paradox that will tell you more or better. And the people that are telling you more are send more emails, do more posts, all of this, right? Because you're going to get more leads. And I agree with them. You will get more leads that way. But there's a whole industry that's come up over, they call them SDRs, sales development reps. They're basically people going through and trying to figure out which leads are good and which leads are bad. It's expensive. It slows things down. So that's the more camp. The better camp are the people that say, oh no, you've got to do one-on-one talks, fly there, visit the customers, talk to this small group, go to a trade show, put the booth up in hopes that, after you spend $30,000, you might be able to talk to have some really good conversations. And it works. Those conversions that you get are strong, but the problem is it's not scalable. So what you need is sort of the best of both worlds. You need the quantity and the quality. That's where profits come from, and that's where I've seen a lot of people leverage this. Right, they can get the quantity and the quality with that, and I think that's one of the powers of podcast interview marketing. When your marketing is better, it's magnetic, and a magnet works by attracting the right people and repelling the wrong people. Both are good, right? If somebody's not an ideal client, you don't want them as a lead. But what we see, and our clients have showed us this, is that from podcast interview marketing, the leads close faster, right? The sales time is shorter because they've already know about you. They close at a higher rate, right? They've already self-selected. If they've listened to you for 30 or 45 minutes, they've turned you up or turned you off. They're coming there ready to go. The other thing too is that they close for a higher initial engagement, which you would expect, right? Because it's almost like a personal referral. And they churn less because it's based on a relationship, not just, oh, I'll put my toe in the water. So from that standpoint, the better the marketing, the better the sales, right? And so if people are just saying, I need more leads, you don't need more leads. You're optimizing for profits. And how do you get profits? You get profits from happy customers that value what you do. So you want to get those happy customers, the ideal clients, not just more random leads.
Got it. Okay. Let's go back to freedom because you were talking a lot about freedom earlier. And this all sounds great, but I'm wondering how can you integrate podcast interview marketing into a business and not lose the balance of taking care of your other responsibilities? It seems like a lot. So, how do you handle that?
Yeah, it's there's a book called it's a kid's book. It's like the little guy that's walking around with all the hats on, and
Oh, yeah, I remember that one. Oh, God, I remember that. Yes.
the monkeys steal his hats. Um, that's how I vision being a business owner, right? You've got all of these hats on, and all of the hats are important. And one of the things that got me in previous businesses was I had all these hats on that I had to take care of. But if I went away to a conference, if I went to speak at an event and was gone for 3 days, I could only wear one hat. Whereas with podcast interview marketing, we're doing this interview here. I can carve out 45 minutes of my day and get that marketing piece done, get that education piece done, and put that out there. And it's not a 3-day carve out. So it gives us a lot more flexibility and also the freedom, right? Most of my interviews are done here um, in my home, right? So it's easy to come here, but there are other ones. Some of the biggest interviews I've done have been from hotel rooms, right? If you've got the right microphone, and I always use the same microphone we give to all of our clients when I'm in a hotel, and I'll just pull it out of my backpack. I can set it up, take the lampshade off the lamp in a hotel, move the camera ever so slightly so you can't see the unmade bed, and now I can do a great podcast interview there. So that gives me a lot of flexibility to respond to opportunities also. So it doesn't keep me, in an office or tied to home. But also, if somebody says, "Hey, I want to do this over this time," and I'm like, "Oh shoot, you know, that's my anniversary. We're going to be out of town and everything like that." Well, at least I can say, "Oh, well, I can carve out, 45 minutes here and I can work and do that." So it gives that whole lot of flexibility in what we said before, you know, work is what you do, not where you go. And, marketing and public speaking, you can do that from anywhere, pretty much at any time.
I love that. I definitely have my camera on top of a picture frame on top of a box on my desk right now. So the unconventional setup, it definitely, you got to work with what you can. So having better marketing leads to better sales. I've gathered that. But to me, Tom, that sounds like money. So for entrepreneurs or smaller business owners, how could they effectively scale business growth with podcast interview marketing without significantly increasing their marketing budget? Is there even a way to do that? How have you seen that work?
Yeah. And everybody's got a constrained budget, right? Whether or not you're a solopreneur just starting out or you're Amazon, right? Amazon's got a limited budget. So they're trying to make the idea of where they can make the biggest impact, where they can compete, and where they can get the biggest return on investment, right? This is marketing. If it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense. So you start looking at that and saying, what can I do that's going to take the least amount of time and the least amount of money, right? And
Because
so,
time is money, right?
oh, time is money. And the thing is that we can get more money, right? You can go to the bank. Well, back in the days, you could go to the bank and get a loan, right? It's not like you could just say, "Oh, I'm going to get 24 more hours this week." And a lot of times we'll try doing that. It's called the weekends, right? Just work through the weekend. But at a certain point, that's not scalable. And for business owners, how do we buy time? Right? We hire great people that can do it for us. And that could be employees, that could be virtual assistants, that could be partners that already know how to do it. So I would look at that and say, what do I have as far as resources in time and money? What's it going to cost me? What's going to be the return on investment? And then the other thing that I've learned as I've gotten older, Chloe, um, people say you should learn from your mistakes. I don't agree with that, right? Because every time I've learned from my mistakes, it's really costly and really painful, right?
Uh-huh. There's got to be an easier way.
I'd rather learn from other people's mistakes, right?
I hear you. Yeah, absolutely, Tom.
And so going out there and finding what have other people done, right? And we openly share how we do podcast interview marketing, right? Years ago, I wrote that book, Podcast Guest Profits: How to Grow Your Business with a Targeted Interview Strategy. And I remember people saying, "Well, why would you give them the cookbook on how to do this?" And I said, "Well, I want people to get better results." And the other thing I look at is there's a lot of famous chefs out there that put out the cookbooks. And it doesn't mean everybody looks at it and goes, "Wow, now I don't have to go to your restaurant." There are some people that would have never gone to the restaurant that they'll try making the dish, and God love them, right? There's a lot of other people that go through the recipe and they're like, "Wow, that's a lot of work. I just want the results from."
Yeah, I'm just going to go to the restaurant.
Yeah, and that's what we see a lot with our clients. Maybe they'll try it at first and they're like, "Wow, there's a lot more involved in this," or, it doesn't make sense for them to buy all the data that we have, they're buying it for one person. We're buying it for hundreds of people. So, and then also the relationships they can tap into. So I would look at that as like when you're trying to maximize your return on investment, focus on what you're going to get out of it and what you're going to have to put into it, and put real value on, this is how the budget of time I have. This is the budget of money I have. And the great part is when it starts to take off, you get more money, but you'll probably lose more time because you're going to start having to do fulfillment, right? You're going to be building the team. You're going to be serving clients. So that's more than ever when you need somebody to take one of those hats off and start doing the outreach for you, doing the vetting of the shows, doing the preparation for that, and also making sure that you get the maximum conversions on each show.
Okay. Now, what would you say to any business owners that don't have in-house marketing? How could they effectively venture into podcast interview marketing if they don't have the set people in to help them do that?
If you run a marketing business, I can totally see having in-house marketing, right?
Oh, yeah. But let's be realistic. Entrepreneurs, small businesses don't always have that.
And even if they do, I can think of some great friends that have marketing agencies, and I go to them on how to use YouTube, how to use Instagram, all these other things, how to set up a funnel, but they don't know podcasts, right? This idea of, I am a full service digital marketing agency. No, you're not. Nobody can be an expert in everything. That's like going to the full service doctor, right? I'm not going to the doctor that can do my root canal and can do my knee surgery.
And give me a haircut. Yeah.
Right.
I got a different guy for that.
So you've got a guy for that. And so start to look and say, do I have strengths in my marketing part right now? Could I go out and hire those strengths? Could I tap into somebody's existing network? And maybe it's not forever. Maybe, it's just for a campaign, a season, to see how this works. And that's great too. We've got a lot of clients that do that. And they're like, we've got this great big marketing department. Nobody knows how to do it. They've read the book, but it's different between reading the book and sort of interning with the chef. So they'll come in for a campaign, 6 or 12 months, go through this. And they're like, yeah, we think we've got this now. And I think that's great because that frees people up so that, we can take on a different client.
Okay. Well, Tom, I have learned so much today. You really opened my eyes to a lot of things. I feel like every time I talk to you, I learn some new anecdote about sales that I'd never heard before. You're a wealth of knowledge. So I really appreciate you answering my questions, and I look forward to speaking to you again.
Thank you, Chloe. So there you have it. These are the stories, philosophies, and rationale that I share with my team and our clients. Now, some may wonder, why do you share it so openly? Well, others have helped me along the way. Others will say, aren't you afraid people will copy you? I was taught years ago, they will always copy what the industry leader did, but they won't be able to copy what we are doing or will do. If you have any questions you'd like answered about podcast interview marketing or Interview Valet, just let us know. We've been blessed to be a blessing.